everyone, a very warm welcome back. And now we have a session looking at the world of voice with all the excitement about perhaps newer messaging channels. And I use that word lightly when I'm talking about RCS business messaging because it's been around actually a long time, but it's getting traction now. It's very, very easy, as we say in the UK, it's a very British expression, to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So to forget about the main things underpinning so much of your revenue today. There's SMS on the pure business messaging side of things, but at the end of the day, the most natural channel for communication between humans today is this. It's the spoken word, it's voice. So it's absolutely fair that we have a session dedicated to the world of voice. And I'm pleased to say it's sponsored by LANCK Telecom, who built up very much a position of looking at the world of voice, which is fantastic that we remember that. I'm pleased to introduce, first of all, Mikhail Borisov, Market Manager for Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia. Mikhail, pleasure to have you with us on the show. From LANCK Telecom, I'm going to introduce also Igor Skutsenia, Senior Business Development Manager from LANCK Telecom. Igor is an anti-fraud expert.
Hi,
lovely to have you with us. And finally, Dmitry Sumin, Head of Products for AB Handshake Corporation, one of our latest joining members. Dmitry, lovely to have you with us as well.
So, nice to meet you.
Nice. Let's have a little introduction then to LANCK Telecom. Who would like to talk about LANCK Telecom? Mikhail or Igor? Introduce LANCK. Go for it. I'll pick Mikhail. Go for it. Introduce LANCK Telecom. Who is LANCK Telecom? What do you do? How long have you been around? And where are you active?
Hello, James and team. Well, first of all, thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak today about such an important topic, which we will go into more detail later on. In terms of LANCK Telecom, so we've been on the market, on the voice market initially for quite some time now, starting in 2001 and up to
it's the same
today.
Time started, so the same age as MEF. Yeah.
Yes. I believe good companies have successful stories in common. So exactly. Maybe that's one of them for sure. So yes, we are in voice market. We are in SMS market. We are developing our internal products, the anti-fraud products. So basically trying to be a one-stop customer for the global client. We try to solve everybody's problems just by taking it on us and just being their problem-free solution.
Fantastic. I know we're talking about voice in this session, but previous sessions have talked about A2P voice flash calling. It's a topic very, very close to LANCK Telecom's heart, I know, and Igor's in particular, and also AIT in previous sessions as well. And that's something that you're working on as well. So protecting consumers, protecting stakeholders is very much what LANCK Telecom is about. But Igor, would you like to frame the discussion? What are we going to be talking about today, and what's our focus on today?
Thank you very much, James, and thank you for having us. We will talk about the difficult topic of fraud, and the thing is that it's persistent. The market of voice is very, very large, and the sharks are coming there, trying to take advantage of the users, trying to take advantage of the operators, trying to take advantage of aggregators. And there are multiple scenarios, and we will talk about two of the most difficult to detect, two of the most difficult to counter. That would be call stretching and smart false answer supervision.
Fantastic. So call stretching, smart answer false supervision. Let me get this right. Smart false answer supervision. I need to learn FAS. I'll be learning a lot more about it next week at the GSMA WAS meeting, no doubt as well. Could you explain in simple language what these things are to the audience? Because we can't assume they know.
Let me try to share my screen here. Do you see my screen? Do you see the slides?
Not yet. MEF team, if you can jump in. If Igor can't show them in the next 5 or 10 seconds, that would be great.
Okay. Entire screen it is. Okay. Oh, that means that it would have to. do some settings, etc., etc.
Okay, no problem. Meth,
yeah,
can you jump in? Can you show? See, this is why we have the presentations as a backup. Let's see if we need to use them. But anyway, while we wait for the presentation to come up, can you just start explaining Smart False Answer Supervision, FAS? What is that?
Mikhail, I think it would be better if you could explain this
in simple language for the uninitiated.
Yes, I was going to suggest
myself.
if I get a chance to explain a little bit whilst we search for the slides. So starting with call stretching, it sort of speaks for itself. It is a typical, well, not typical, it's a tricky kind of fraud actually that would typically occur after a call has been already connected for some time. For example, after a 5-minute mark, a fraudulent carrier would intervene and disconnect the B side and connect the A side to some kind of a recording of the conversation or maybe some other type of recording. The whole purpose to keep the A side connected for as long as possible without them knowing or understanding that something is occurring and they're being fraudulently charged for this call. So the whole purpose here is to extend the charge duration of the call and directly collect the profits for the fraudsters into their pocket. This is a kind of fraud that is now affecting enterprises. It is a major breach of privacy. It is a huge customer dissatisfaction at the end of the line. So it causes like payment disputes, trouble ticketing, eventually financial losses from the fraud itself. I mean, frankly speaking, it truly does affect the whole of the supply chain.
Hey, thank you. I think, let me do this. I'm going to have a go at this. There we go.
There we go.
There we go. Perfect.
Yep. Yeah,
got it. Lovely. So if you roll through that, we can go through that now. Lovely. So call stretching. Let's go to call stretching.
So essentially, this is what Mikhail have just explained. This is kind of a diagram that shows how call stretching is operating on the between the operators. So what's happening, and there's a B party recording, which is a major breach of privacy, and there's obviously some meddling with call duration recognized by each membering party. So the terminating service provider would have less duration of a call than originating. That would create some difficulties at the end of a month, and that's not even touching the privacy breach that is happening. Obviously, the enterprises are not happy to hear that and to understand that their conversations are being recorded, that some third party is listening, some third party has full control of on what exactly is going on their own personal or business calls. So this is the major problem.
But call stretching, what makes it different from other frauds, and how, I suspect I know the answer to this one, how easy is it to detect?
It's both of these things are both of these questions are connected, meaning that since it's different, it's kind of difficult to tweak your anti-fraud defense and to make sure that it recognizes this fraud scenario. It's very difficult to detect because it essentially starts as a legal call. I mean, the majority of fraud scenarios are recognized on the stage of establishing the call, when you can check the A number, B number, you can check the tendencies and generic voice traffic. But in here, it's a perfectly legal call that is being taken advantage of, and that makes it super difficult to detect. And without customer complaint or without any kind of external input, it's very, very difficult. Tools like CDR analysis, tools like applying AI in real time, they are almost powerless. This is what makes it very, very difficult and very, very different in terms of fraud management as well.
Okay, thank you. Dmitry, I'd like to bring you into the conversation. You could introduce yourself and AB Handshake, what you do. Your name kind of says it all to myself, but again, for the uninitiated, you can explain, and where you sit within the value chain and what you do in cooperation with LANCK Telecom. That would be a nice introduction, please.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I wanted to say that I'm sorry not to be here in person, but then I realized that nobody's here in person today.
No.
Yeah.
And we're not sitting in your living room with you. That would be kind of nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So my name is Dmitry. I work as the head of products for AB Handshake, and our mission is specifically to help operators and carriers to deal with a lot of frankly speaking cases, including such fraud schemes as call stretching. So we had a long time ago, we kind of started noticing this behavior, and we immediately started to think of a solution, of course. So we that was one of the reasons why our call validation framework appeared. I think I could briefly explain how that works. And
yeah, so Dimitri, sorry about interrupting you. When you mentioned you noticed it appearing, what parts of the world did you notice this, and approximately when did this really start to become an issue? If you can remember.
I think it was roughly 2 or 3 years ago when it was massively raised by some of the carriers to our knowledge. The problem is that it's really hard to trace, and this is one of the problems. So it really comes initially it all came down to customer complaints. So once there's a complaint from a customer, the operator starts to investigate that, and then you start to understand what's going on. So it's really given the let's say the technology that's currently available for most of the operators.
Is it any specific regions of the world, or is it becoming something very general and lots of countries see this?
Again, so because it's it's difficult to be objective here. So the majority of complaints we know about, they're from Europe and North America, but maybe that's just due to the fact that the complaints were handled maybe more accurately. There are more people who are actually taking this to the operator. So maybe that was just this kind of bias, because I don't think that's kind of a problem unique in any way to these regions. And we had examples when we started working with that. We had examples in other regions too. So I think it's just purely circumstantial that the first cases were from these regions. Yeah.
Okay. Lovely, thank you. Mikhail, can I just ask you, from your perspective, the regions you're working in, how big of an issue is call stretching, and how is it impacting on a daily basis your account interactions?
Absolutely. In the region of Middle East, and I would say Africa as well, it has unfortunately quite a big impact on the day-to-day lives of people, simply because usually these destinations, like I mentioned, in the Middle East and Africa, are high-cost destinations. And of course, these are the ones where the fraudsters are more likely to target, because of course, having disconnecting the two parties, they are earning more money by collecting the high revenue profits directly into their pocket. It would be destinations like maybe Tunisia, Algeria, the 60, the 40 cent per minute destinations. And also it would appear to be that these countries are not in the possession of the tools to verify and identify such call stretching and smart FAS that occur on their networks. In day-to-day lives, the effect which it has, like we mentioned earlier, the end users are charged with enormous bills, which the phone bills which they never dialed, and the countries they never called. As Igor mentioned, is privacy violations for end users and for the telcos who are in charge here. And like I mentioned, since not all the countries are in possession of sophisticated smart tools to tackle smart FAS and call stretching, some resort to blocking entire number ranges in order to just reduce the risk of these fraud attacks on some specific number range. And this is eventually for us, like normal people, we are just unable to call some specific ranges to reach our people.
That's a real huge impact, particularly if people have moved to work in a neighboring country, etc. That affects their daily lives. Igor, we know in the world of A2P SMS, in the past year, 2 years, there's been a huge increase and huge pressure on the commercial model. In simple language, particularly the international A2P SMS rates have been increased a lot and very markedly, and in some countries and operators in particular. Is that a very recent phenomenon that Mikhail was alluding to in countries, for example, in North Africa, like Tunisia and Algeria? Is that something that has happened in a similar time frame as well? And has this impact come, or has this change been made with the move to what's called A-based charging? If you could explain that as well.
I think it's kind of with this kind of voice fraud, I think it's just typical that fraudsters would target those destinations that are high cost, and this is exactly the tendency that Mikhail just explained. It doesn't matter if it's call stretching or not. Smart false answer supervision, the risk that we'll talk about later on, any kind of fraud and any kind of advantage that fraudsters could use to make sure that they are staying under the radar, that the detected volume is very small, so they keep doing their not so great things. And obviously, whenever they can include spoof numbers, they can include anything, and anything that would make it difficult to spot what exactly is going on. That this is the road that they're going to go. I mean, some fraudsters, they don't possess the technology to do it, and they are the most easy to tackle. But what's difficult with those voice fraud, with call stretching, with smart false answer supervision, is you can only estimate the size of a threat and the size of the damage based on the detected volume. Everything that you miss, it's basically like the damages could be a lot more, but we have no opportunity, virtually no opportunity to know exactly the size of the problem. So yeah, I would assume that any trick that fraudsters could employ to make sure that they stay undetected, they would use.
Dimitri, what about, so that's individuals, what about enterprises? Are enterprises being impacted by this?
Yes, of course, yes, that's also currently a growing problem, because we do see a lot that the focus for many fraudsters is shifting, because again, they are aiming, of course, for the bigger money, for a bigger business for themselves, and of course, any individual normally has on just so much money that can be kind of lured out of him. And enterprises are, in this case, a huge potential market for the fraudsters. They normally also lack some of the controls that maybe need to be there in place. And of course, there's this additional hop of the communication between the enterprise and the service provider, who is the operator, which is not always working ideally. So this is really the ideal landscape for the fraudsters to thrive in. And we do get a lot more requests recently for the operator, specifically to tailor some of the solutions to be able to provide the protection for enterprise customers as a service, or just as part of the normal operations.
Can I ask, what's the process on detection? So the previous sessions, we talked about the artificial inflation of traffic with SMS, and it's the enterprises that are left with the big problem with the big unexpected bill. So let's say I expect my bill to be $500 for my SMS. At the end of the month, I get one for $50,000. Now, let's say you have the same issue. I'm an enterprise. I have the same issue with voice. What's the process? Who do I go to, and what's done? Because with the AIT, there is no real defined process. Whereas I know on the voice side of things, particularly with international traffic revenue share fraud, which is ITRF, another type of fraud, there is a more established international process for that. What's the process with this type of fraud and actually getting to the bottom of it, rectifying it, and ultimately not leaving the enterprise with a bill, which for a small company, that could literally sink it and means it goes out of business? So what's the process that goes on underway?
Yeah, so I believe actually there are actually two kind of procedures that can be followed. So of course, and I think that would be the preferred procedure for, let's say, a small to medium-sized enterprise. Of course, the preferable option here would be to communicate with the service provider, with the operator, because again, normally the operator of this kind of enterprise is not staffed enough to really understand the different various fraud patterns, to analyze different solutions and what different vendors are bringing to the table. So ideally, of course, this should be available as a service from the operator. For large operators with huge volumes of traffic, I think they sometimes at least have this opportunity to handle these decisions themselves. They sometimes do request specific controls to be in place. They sometimes request specific traffic handling patterns to be in place. So again, in this case, they are more open, of course, to communicate directly with the vendors if they understand a specific problem and they see a specific solution. Because technically, any solution from the problems we're discussing today, it's available both as a service from an operator and as a standalone solution for the enterprise to use. It's fully possible.
Fantastic. We have your slides at the ready to show if you want them, Dmitry. Do you want to show your slides now and go through?
Yes, basically it's more than one slide, basically. Yeah, so we can go through that. Yeah, so
let's go for it.
Yeah, sure. So the approach I wanted to explain here, I think it's really crucial for understanding of cases like the call stretching, is that today a lot of focus on many levels, on the operator level, on the enterprise level, is put into, let's say, the verification or the validation of the call at the beginning. So when the call started, the operator, the enterprise wants to know, okay, so is it a call from a valid customer? Is it a good call? Is it not? Okay, so some verifications is done at this point. What is missing? So of course, that's a good thing to do, obviously, but what's missing at this point is actually the understanding of what's happening with the call further. And the only case is how you can really be in full control of the traffic, be in full control of actually how the call goes on, is this opportunity of validating the call from a destination, from the originator to the terminator, and doing that continuously through the call. So we are speaking here about the validation not only of the call start event, but also the validation of whether the call has been successfully connected to the intended party, and for the call session, where it's crucially whether the call was actually ended simultaneously at the two parties. So specifically to tackle that, we are providing this, let's say, validation framework, which can work basically as a network, let's say, model, or between any two given endpoints, to specifically to look for any inconsistency, not only with the, let's say, a number at the 2 points, but also at the any mismatches with the duration, with any parameters within the call itself.
Dmitry, can I just stop you there? We've got a question from Mohammed Bilal Khanna, and you can see the question in the chat. Is it possible to detect and block FAS just based on voice firewall capabilities alone without employing any testing platform? If yes, kindly share details on the detection mechanism. I'm sure you share all the details because that's what you do, and that's what you make money on. But how do you do it? Is it just a voice firewall, or what do you do to actually detect this and stop it?
I think kind of the problem here is that the definition of firewall is really vague. So a firewall as a kind of no just stopping calls, yes, we can call that a firewall. But then what's the kind of the power and the technology behind the firewall? What does it know? And why does it make this decision? So in this case, I think that a firewall should be kind of specified as a solution which basically has a certain fixed list of rules along which it operates. And in this case, no, I think that would all be enough. So in this case, for example, for false answer supervision, you really need more inputs. So you really need to take into account multiple parameters of the call, multiple factors, including the patterns of, let's say, traffic from sometimes other customers, kind of your recent discoveries in the field. So again, of course, I can't go into all the parameters you really need to analyze, but there's just hundreds of them, and that needs to be really done that needs to be done in real time. So basically, a simple firewall, no. A firewall connected to a powerful and well-trained AI solution, yes, that could do the trick. Again, for call stretching, again, even that won't be enough because of this kind of firewall mode. This can kind of let go through originally if it's a good one, but it will never know what happens with the call has been, for example, extended beyond the legal boundaries. In this case, you need really real-time bilateral communication with the end party. So there you go with the validation framework, which is an essential component in detection of the call stretching.
How do you get that? How do you do that real-time element?
Yeah, so in this case, what we of course require from the party we're working with is we require real-time access to the call signaling, and preferably, of course, in a kind of a control mode. So that can be control from, let's say, the AB handshake side, or the ability to communicate with some controlling function on the network or the enterprise side. So we can just relay a message. Okay, so we think that the call should be blocked, and then the customer will terminate the call on their side.
Fantastic, thank you. So Mikhail and Igor, moving back to the LANCK side of things, these solutions, is there understanding from mobile operators that they really need to get a handle on this? So they need a smart firewall, if you want to call it that, with this AI, with the AI logic behind as well. So not just the firewall with the logic. Are they starting to understand that and really understand that and get a handle on it? Or is there still plenty to be done with so many mobile operators out there not understanding the gravity of the issue and how much it's impacting them monetarily?
Well, the way fraud management operates, and probably Mikhail can kind of tell more about the commercial side of things. In terms of fraud management, it's very difficult to basically understand the significance of that risk if he's very, very difficult to detect. I mean, the volumes of call stretching are tied to the number of customer complaints and number of the actual cases of breaching the privacy, and the actual cases that were reported by the third party. That means the detected volume is very, very small. This means that whenever there's a kind of a table of risks, and they're arranged in terms of priority and actual damage and potential damage, those fraud scenarios that are difficult to detect would be much lower than those fraud scenarios that are easy to detect, like 1GIRI, PBX hacking, and other easier to detect fraud scenarios. That means that these fraud scenarios that are inherently more complex to detect, they would get less attention and they would have less resources devoted. And this is the reality. I mean, whenever the fraud managers would be evaluating their work and exchanging and explaining their performance to the top management would be looking for the resources to be allocated to more significant threats and less resources, sadly, to be allocated to less significant threats.
And this type of fraud, so again, I keep relating you back to the messaging world and the SMS world in particular. You can go big time and just really go for it, try and maximize the money, and trying to take as much of my money as possible. And let's say my normal bill is £20 a month, and then I end up with a £2,000 bill. That's very noticeable. But if I had a £25 bill, so £5 of it was fraudulent, I've actually had this, dare I say, with my mobile operator. And I get onto the chat, I spend the time trying to go through it. It's not worth my time dealing with it. Do you know what I did? I'm sorry to say it, and I'm in the industry. I just paid my £25 and let that £5 go, because it just wasn't worth dealing with it. But if you go into a developing country and someone's normal bill is, say, £5, and that pound means a huge amount to them, then that's going to get their attention. That's going to raise the complaint. So is there a correlation where in the developing world, because it's that this fraud is a high percentage, there are more complaints and therefore there's more detection, so to call it, in the developing world than the established world, or not? There isn't that link.
Mikhail, there you go.
Yeah,
Mikhail, go for it. Sorry. Yeah.
I just wanted to add the fact that even though I mentioned that we do see it happening in countries like North Africa, Middle East, it is not only those. We do see it in Europe as well, especially with OBR now being
origin-based routing, A-based charging,
or origin-based routing into Europe. Depending on what country you're calling from, you will be charged different rates, and in that sense, Europe is also under attack, under threat of smart, fast, and call stretching. So yeah, you could pay the extra £5 and just forget about it, or in maybe some other, say less developed countries, it can be a bit of a bigger obstacle. But generally speaking, I think as a industry itself, we are seeing the effect on mobile operators and their attempt to fight these types of fraud. I mean, it's very important to understand as well the fact that it's initially a legitimate call. It is being intercepted midway through the conversation. So we would argue that the traditional methods, the traditional anti-fraud systems, in this sense, tend to be very, I mean, they lack the capabilities to identify because they work on different indicators. They identify maybe some large volumes of simultaneous calls or unusual volumes to uncommon destinations. This is a legitimate call, which has already been set up, and it's just being intercepted midway, and the profits are then being collected by the fraudsters. So this is very difficult to spot. So yes, you do, no matter what country or the region, you do need to educate your I would say it's one of the key factors, to educate your staff and to invest in powerful tools that will, help fight these types of fraud, and that will, keep the learning process going, because the fraudsters don't sit there waiting for some new tree to grow to collect the apples. They plant those trees, so we need to be there.
Can I just ask this? They absolutely do, and they're smart, and they're getting smarter and smarter and smarter, and the types of fraud out there are just mind-blowingly, unfortunately, good and very sophisticated on so many fronts. Now, I co-run with Ross, my colleague Ross, the Direct Carrier Billing Working Group, the Direct Carrier Billing for Growth Working Group, and an area that group is working on is the whole area of mobile network operator customer support for that issue. So most mobile operators in the world, if you ring up, I've got a problem with direct carrier billing, the agent at the end of the phone, or however I contact them, the contact center individual wouldn't have or may not be specifically aware about issues direct carrier billing related. Are you finding that's an issue in the voice world as well? So if I've got an issue, I've noticed something and I'm a subscriber, when I contact a mobile operator, the customer service, the contact center contact point, you get into difficulties because there isn't that knowledge by those people, there isn't that training. Or are you seeing there's more education about the issue filtering through to the contact center team of operators? Dimitri, let's roll with that with you. What are you seeing from mobile operators and their training? They're for the first point of contact, actually dealing with that issue with a customer who's experienced the problem.
Yes, of course. So again, normally we are maybe not involved maybe to that extent. At least previously, we were not involved to that extent in this aspect of a problem. However, recently, yes, we do see significantly more requests from the operators, not only to provide a certain solution, let's say the software that detects something, but also to provide the training to, first of all, explain all the all the background behind the types of frauds we're detecting. So basically how it works, to explain, so to make sure the team has a deep understanding of what's kind of the modus operandi and how basically this all happens. And secondly, yes, to provide best practices, to provide some recommendations for basically build the whole procedure for handling this type of fraud within the organization, from detection, when there needs to be some billing adjustments made, how this should be done, what should be the communication. So yes, we do receive more and more requests to kind of provide this complete, let's say, service regarding the
and do you know what, Dimitri, you could be part of the solution, because we have a MEF education initiative, and as part of that, I could see in our future a little module about voice fraud, and putting in simple language, this is what this voice fraud means, and this is how a subscriber could be impacted. So if you're receiving a call and the subscriber says ABC, this is probably what it is, and this is how to react. So hold that thought. That might be something for the future. But let's come on to this. Now, we actually have a question, and Igor, I'm going to bring you in for this one. A question from Mohammed again. Another question: do we have any capabilities, or do you guys have any capabilities for detecting and blocking of voice AI frauds? Are you seeing AI being used in voice fraud more and more? We're certainly seeing that in messaging, in SMS and chat apps and things. Are you seeing it in the world of voice too?
Sadly, yes, because we see how more complex the fraud scenarios are becoming. And basically, we have just discussed that topic last week in one of the anti-fraud associations that we're a part of, how the fraudsters now are using assigned and allocated numbers with the fraud schemes. So yesterday this was a legal number. Today it's used in fraud scenario, and tomorrow it's going to be a legal number. And this is clearly the fact that the fraudsters, they employ a technology that allows them to do it. And this move makes the usage of databases of fraudulent numbers obsolete, because you cannot block those numbers, because you're blocking legal numbers, you're blocking legal customers that are assigned and allocated with name and surname, or the enterprise is tied to it. And it makes it extra difficult for detect any kind of fraud that is employed.
Very good point, because up till this point, traditionally, it's been all about sharing information. The insurance industry sharing the name, the address of an individual. The phone number is the name and address of the individual today.
Exactly, and whenever you have a dispute, one of the things that you look at, you do the manual testing. I mean, you reach out to the number, and you hear the real voice, the real person behind it, or the real enterprise, and you think, hey, this is not a fraudulent call because this involves a legal number. Well, it's no longer the case. And it makes it extra difficult. Also, we see that fraudsters are getting better at generating the content of those pesky robocalls, which are plaguing the world right now, with different kind of content, different things that are told over the phone. And we understand that this is no ordinary con man reading something from the scenario. This is automated. And fraudsters are sadly are getting their hands on the better technology, and we have to get ready for that. So,
but how do we counter that as a community?
I think first of all, information sharing and just understanding how you detect and how you counter different fraud scenarios is very, very helpful. For example, with the case of assigned and allocated numbers being used by fraudsters, we highly advise with very, very high emphasis on that, to make the blocking applied for a limited amount of time, and to the combination of A and B numbers, not just to A numbers or B numbers, but to combination of those, so that the legal calls that are using those A and B numbers would be unaffected. But whenever you have that opportunity to have a limited amount of time to be blockage to be applied to a combination of A number and B number, A range and B range, that is definitely helpful. And use the tools like AB handshake process. I think Dmitry can tell more about it.
James, I think you're on mute.
Yes, that's my first time. I do it 3 times in a 2 or 3 day event. That's my first time. First strike. Dmitry, perfect timing. Igor gave you the entrance. Go for it.
Yeah, so I think of course, basically it all comes down to communication in one way or another. So because, yes, fraud is a well-coordinated industry, obviously. So we need to be at least coordinated to the same extent, if not better. So so basically, yes, I think it's all down to talking, to sharing. The validation framework is one example of how this can be done. So this is real-time communication between the two parties when you help the other party to identify if there's a fraudulent case. Of course, there are other options. So, for example, there's knowledge sharing and best practices sharing, which isn't organized to the level which it should, of course, because we did even talk to large operator groups when they said, okay, even within our company group, we still don't have the level and the speed of the sharing of fraudulent cases, fraudulent incidents, even between the sister companies, let's say so. And of course, we are not talking here about sharing with external parties. And also, I think an important thing here is to look into the real-time fraud data sharing. So we do have all these databases right now. So it's like, okay, so they are updated from time to time. They are sometimes pushed to the customers, or you can visit the database and kind of upload a fresh copy sometimes, but it's really not as quick as it should be. So I think we will be looking here, and we also do provide it as a part of our portfolio at AB Handshake, to real-time API services, where you can in real time either receive a notification that, okay, so this number range is now under attack, so be cautious in sending traffic towards that, or maybe temporarily block that in your system, or to query, okay, so is this destination now safe or not? So basically these real-time API interactions between operators and vendors, or even between operators, should be also very valuable in future.
Fantastic. And don't be shy, use the event chat, put your contact details in if anyone wants to get hold of you and your companies, LANCK, AB Handshake, anyone out there, any of you speaking, use the chat, because we have lots of people on live throughout the day today and tomorrow. So share your details there. Absolutely. Believe it or not, we are nearing the close of this session. We've got another 3 or 4 minutes to go. But Mikhail, how would you like to close this? And what would you say to anybody out there, any operator who's or any individual enterprise who worried about these types of fraud, about how we as an industry are collaborating together to fix this? Do you think the future is bright in absolutely getting a handle on this type of fraud? I would hope the answer is yes, but let's hear.
Absolutely. There is no other answer other than yes, of course. We only look at the positive side of things, but we need to take into consideration all the aspects. So I think, as Dmitry and Igor and yourself have mentioned already, the key element here is, of course, the communication, be it internal within the company or external within the industry, so between various companies. But it's definitely the communication that needs to be emphasized here for operators and other participants of the industry.
Yeah, it's between companies such as yourself, such as LANCK Telecom. You've been in voice for 20 plus years now. Companies such as yourselves within the MEF community, within the communities of other trade organizations you're members of, between trade associations as well. We can all do more to cooperate on this as well. It's the only way we can effectively combat it. I totally agree. And Igor, I'll leave it up to you for the last remark from LANCK Telecom.
Thank you very much, James. Well, yeah, but just like Mikhail had put it, the communication is key. Internal and external, make sure that we have our defenses up, make sure we know the latest, make sure that we know what is going on, we learn. You can never stop learning and just never relax. Sadly, the fraudsters are getting better. The technology is there. They invent new scenarios like call stretching and smart false answer supervision. And it's up to us to communicate, talk to each other, learn how to detect them, learn how to counter them, and learn how to actually make sure it goes away, or at least that the damage is reduced to a minimum.
Fantastic. Igor, thank you very much. So I'd like to thank LANCK Telecom for sponsoring this panel session, looking at the world of voice. Look, the world of voice is huge. It's worth hundreds of billions a year. So many companies are making a very good living from voice and will continue to do so. But it's under threat because it's such a huge market. So thank you very much to LANCK Telecom. Dmitry, real pleasure having you on again from AB Handshake. And last but not least, I'd like to mention AfricaCom. This year on November the 13th and 14th, myself, my colleagues Ross Flynn and Beatrice Dottavio from MEF will be in Cape Town along with the LANCK Telecom team and so many other MEF members. And on the 14th of November, we have a very, very nice MEF event, the afternoon and the evening on the 14th, kindly sponsored by LANCK Telecom. And indeed, MEF team, if you can drop the links in, please, to the November 13th and 14th events. MEF members, you should have who attended those events last year, you will have received an email from Carol mentioning that with the registration links. Please do register for that, and we look forward to seeing you. And I'm sure this topic of voice will come up in South Africa during AfricaCom as well. So Igor, Mikhail, Dmitry, thank you very much. And I look forward to the next session coming up, which is going to be sponsored by Horde. So thank you very much and enjoy the few second break. Bye for now.